Hi, friends. Welcome to the Gathering podcast. My name is Rebecca Reed. I'm an intern here at the Gathering, and I am also the host of the Gathering podcast, obviously. This podcast is just used as a space for students and faculty of the River Community Church to just come and kind of just have conversations about maybe things that aren't talked about on Tuesday nights. And so today we are talking about godly friendships, which I think is such an important thing to talk about, especially amongst college students, because we need them. Everyone needs them. But, when you come into college, that's what you're really looking for. So I'm here today with Carisa with an
Hello.
S, one S, Turner. Carisa, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here.
Well, thanks, Becky, for inviting me onto the Gathering podcast.
Of course.
Love my Gathering friends. My name's Carisa Turner. I work here at the River on staff as part of the admin team. Kind of get to be involved in a little bit of everything. I have the privilege of supporting and championing the various ministries that we have here and supporting them in various ways. And so it's super fun, super exciting, never a dull moment is how I like to describe it.
It never seems like it whenever I come into the office.
When you have Steve Taboo as the visionary of the ship, it's guaranteed to be a good time.
Man.
So, but I work with an awesome team, and it's really fun to get to work and walk alongside everyone in their various ministries and see how the Lord's moving in those and seeing how I can help in that way. But outside of here, even though I do spend a lot of hours here, I love to travel, love to spend time with friends, love to just chat over a good meal or coffee. Which
we still have to get coffee. We haven't done it yet.
Yeah, Becky, I think that's on you, actually.
On
so
it's okay.
Someone, just went out of town for the summer.
It wasn't that
worked,
long. It was like a month, maybe.
Yeah.
It's not that long.
So we'll work on that. We'll talk about that in our godly friendship.
Not right
combo.
now. Yeah, not right now.
We'll circle back to that.
Yeah.
And I love some of my Tuesday nights at the Gathering, and pouring into college students. And it was a huge season in my life that was really pivotal in my faith and kind of taking that next step and moving towards a deeper relationship with Christ and what that looks like. So that is a sweet spot for me to plug in and serve at.
Yeah, awesome. So you know it, we all know it. We're talking about godly friendships today. So just to kind of get us started, the question I have for you is, why are they so important? Why are godly friendships so important?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's semi-self-explanatory of why godly friendships are important. I think the more that we grow deeper in our walk with Christ, the Lord and the Bible says we are made for community. We're made to be around people. That's a huge thing at the Gathering, is community and biblical community. And I think when we surround ourselves with godly friendships, it's that, the verse from the Bible, that iron sharpens iron. And when people around us are pursuing and chasing after the Lord and being rooted in his truth, that can't not rub off on us and challenge us and push us further in our faith. So I think those relationships help us from a biblical, going to church, encouraging us in our walk with Christ, but also that invades every part of our life. So when we're going through a hard time, or when we're struggling in a class, or we're struggling in a relationship, or we are having a really awesome moment, we have people that walk alongside us that continue to point us to Christ instead of, our worldly desires, or, just you killed it. You can do all these things on your own by yourself. And those people surrounding us that are godly friendships help us bring perspective and back and root us in truth instead of what the world wants to teach us and constantly throw our way. I think the godly friendships in my life are that for me. They are bringing me back to what true north is in every situation, whether it's good or bad or confusing. They help bring some clarity and speak into it with love and truth, whether it's what I want to hear or what I don't. They kind of help hem me in to what the Lord says and what his truth says and what he says about me and what he says about our circumstances. And so I think those are crucial for believers to have godly friendships.
Yeah. so I'm a junior in college now.
That's
And
crazy.
You're
so
I'm
old.
so old. And so coming into college my first year, the thing I knew I wanted the most was to find a church, and to find that community that I'm supposed to have, but didn't really know how to go about doing that, which probably sounds odd because I'm a very extroverted.
Love the people.
Yeah, I
Biggest
love
connector.
people.
Yes.
But it's scary for everyone to
Absolutely.
go and talk to new people and just, put yourself
Especially
out
in a new
there.
town.
Yeah,
New
exactly.
place.
You don't know anyone. I knew I knew everyone from my school came to tech, so it wasn't that bad. But yeah, one thing I noticed was throughout my first year, spoiler alert, I didn't find that community my first year in college. But
So
I
sad.
did. It was really sad. I did find it my second year, and now that I'm here, I'm kind of comparing the two in my mind, and just noticing the other day, and by the other day I say this all the time, but the other day I mean literally 2 months ago,
Close enough.
we were me and Mary Grace and some other girls were at Mary Grace's apartment, and we were watching something, and she asked me, she was like, hey, are you okay with what we're watching, this is okay, is this gonna help you or hurt you in the situation you're in?
Yeah.
And I literally sat there and I was like, what? I was like, you are reading my mind. I immediately called my mom. I was like, I have had no one ever. I was like, I'm an open book. Basically, I think that in order to get over some things that you're struggling with, you have to talk about them.
For sure.
So if you don't know what I'm struggling with and you ask me, I'll tell you. I don't really care. And everyone that is close to me knows about some of the things I'm struggling with. And so and no one's asked me that question before. And I was like, can I just give you a hug? I was like, the fact that you just thought about this right now is so amazing. And I could actually think of a distinctive moment in my freshman year when I was in a situation like that again, and I even told them, hey, I don't know if this is something that I need to be doing. I don't think this is going to help me. And they're like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just throw a cover over your head or something like that. And I was like, not to put the blame on them totally. I should have gotten up and walked out,
Right.
But
right.
Also,
It's a factor.
yeah, you're supposed to love on me in a situation like that. And so that's just an example of why godly friendships are so important. And so just to kind of move on.
And I think in that too,
keep going. Yep.
you
interrupt
just
me.
you just showed the difference in those.
Yeah.
And just a small tiny example, but really that's a big thing. That speaks to a bigger issue and difference in friendships that are rooted in truth and from the Lord, and not that impacts so much in your walk and encourages you, the first relationship and dynamic didn't, and the second even caused you to think a little bit further of that. And I'm sure walk away with how am I implementing that in my friendships too? Am I being that person
Yep.
that sees and cares for the person in their walk with the Lord and honoring him, instead of just what's convenient for me as a person.
Yeah. And to kind of go a little bit deeper into this, what are and you know what? My question just totally went out of my brain. Just right now, it just totally left me. But it's come back. How do you
There it is.
There it is, ding. How do you cultivate those friendships? Kind of think of from I'm 18 years old, maybe 17, because kids be crazy these days.
I started college when I was 17, so don't be judging.
We have someone in our class that started college when they were 15.
Okay, that doesn't feel right.
And I was
but,
I wouldn't even
teach their own.
want to. Yeah, I wouldn't even want to do that because
That's true.
I'm not an adult now. I can't.
Maybe
I feel
they're
I would
ready.
still have to tell
They're
my
ready
mom
to
and
go.
dad where I go. Anyways,
Doesn't
that's
matter.
off topic. Doesn't matter. How, as a freshman coming into college, You're leaving all of your friends. You don't know a single person in Cookeville, Tennessee, or you don't know a single person in whatever state you go to college. What are some ways that I can make it easier to step into that community and to find that community?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say a lot of it is like, Jonathan Pocoluda has this like quote that he talks about with friendships and kind of evaluating friendships. And he says, you know, if it's not healthy, if it's not honoring to the Lord, like choose different playmates, choose a different playground. And so when you come to college, you are, to go with the analogy, choosing a different playground. And you kind of get to choose who you get to spend time with and who you get to be around. And I'm thinking of like me in college. I am from Cookeville, and you're from Cookeville. You don't really want to go to Tennessee Tech. Like you want to go anywhere but Tennessee Tech. Yeah. And so that's a whole different podcast story, but ended up, Lord kept me here for various reasons. And most of my close personal friends went away to school. And so I was basically as if I had just moved here on my own and navigating that. And thankfully I had a church community that I was rooted in and was able to get plugged in with people that are like-minded like me and were chasing after the same thing. But I think a lot of it is intentionality of like, what playground am I going to be on? Back to the analogy. And who are my playmates going to be? And like intentionally choosing those. And it takes a lot of, I feel like, intentionality on our part, but also prayer of like, Lord, I'm stepping out today. I'm going to go to the river this morning for service. And would you, help me to make some connections, help me to find some people there. And through just consistently showing up in settings that I knew were chasing after the same thing, like that is where some of my deepest friendships came from in college. And just kind of organically and naturally, but also having the courage to be like, hey, you seem like a really great person when we were chatting at dinner. Would you want to get coffee? Would you want to, meet up for lunch on campus one day? Like intentionally pursuing those is also our responsibility at times. I think they naturally form a lot, but you also can't sit in your dorm room and expect someone to just like come knock on your door and be like, hey, you love Jesus and you want to go like have dinner at the caf? Like that could happen. I'm not going to, I'm not putting it past the Lord, but like we have to be, responsible for some of that. And he does give us that freedom to choose who we're around, who we surround ourselves with, what environments and settings we get to be a part of. And thankfully here in Cookeville, if you come to Tech, you have lots of really great options to choose from, but you have to be intentional in pursuing that and seeking that out instead of just kind of like getting discouraged and shrinking back, which is super easy to do if you continuously keep showing up places and you're just not connecting and you're not, seeing any friendships form, or people aren't, reaching out to you either. It's not feeling inviting, can get super discouraging. But if you are prayerful on that and keep seeking it, I really do believe the Lord will open doors and make connections for you as well to build those friendships.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing as a college freshman, and this was it for me, it's fear, because especially, I've said this 500 times, but we're just going to keep going with it. Especially since you don't know anyone in the place that you're going to. For some people, that's like super exciting. Like, oh my gosh, right. I don't know anyone. They don't know me. I get to like start fresh. Yeah. I'm just going to sign up for all these clubs and all these organizations, and I'm going to go to all the campus ministries.
All the things.
And I'm going to learn about this, and this at the same time.
Right.
But for some people, that's really scary.
Yeah.
And so something that I've kind of noticed as like time has gone on is, I say that like I'm a 30-year-old woman. I'm only 20.
You've got some experience. You got 2 full years.
Goodness.
2 full years.
And that's enough. But
it is today.
Just students don't want to go places by themselves.
Yeah.
They want to go, and even if they're going with someone else, they want to go to a place where everyone doesn't know what they're doing either. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, that's why the other day when you were talking to me about this episode and you're like, so like, what are we doing? Like, I don't really have anything. Like, I have no notes. Like, do you have anything? The reason why I said, Well, if it makes you feel better, it's because if you said that to me, it would have made me feel better
that was
to
your
know
coping.
to know that you didn't know anything and I didn't know anything either.
So we're on the same playing field.
Because then if you embarrass yourself,
Yeah.
it's okay because I'm embarrassing myself too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just like, I feel like, which is why that first week of college, I just skipped
It's fine.
started 3 different
with you.
sentences, which is why that first week of college is super important, because that's when, you know, Tennessee Tech is doing its week of welcome that actually lasts 2 weeks long.
Quite a long week.
It is a really long week. And, you know, the gathering is doing all the stuff that they're doing that I have no idea about right now.
But it's going to be awesome.
But it's going to be awesome.
Can confirm.
And like everyone else is doing all these things, and like everyone is new. There's like, you're going to go and find someone that you don't know, that doesn't know you, that doesn't know anyone else either.
Right.
And so I know I've missed that whole first year, because I like to say it's because my car broke down and I didn't have a way of getting here, but it was also because the only 3 people that I knew here were gone.
Bummer.
And so like, I didn't want to come in and have to stress about who am I going to sit with at dinner tonight, and who am like, are they going to be able to hear me singing while we're worshiping and stuff like that. I never actually thought about that last one.
Right.
And so
simply
so,
from a friend.
Thinking about those things can get really, really stressful.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, though, speaking from experience, is all generated in our own head.
Oh, of course.
None of that is ever even like implied from most people, like that you're not welcome here, or that you have to come with someone, or if you don't come with someone, that it's going to be awkward as can be. I don't love walking into a room that I don't know anyone in the room and I'm walking in by myself. Like, I've never been there. That is like truly one of my worst nightmares. Like, I have had to conquer that fear, but it is like, I think we build it up in our own heads way more than it ever would be. And now seeing on the flip side of that, we're pumped at the gathering to have people show up that haven't been here at all before, and they're coming by themselves. Great. We have so many awesome people to connect you to. Like, thank you for being here and stepping out and coming. Like, it's such the opposite of what we build up in our minds to be of what truth. And we let the enemy really toy with us in that way quite often. Of, we start at this small thing of like, yeah, I'm a little nervous, which is fair. You're allowed to feel nervous, but then he just like takes it and runs with it, and we just let him, to the point where we often talk ourselves out of ever making that step in any direction towards like biblical community or godly friendships, because it's just too scary. It's too much. Yeah.
I know whenever I see new people at the gathering, you know, my go-to is to call them my best friend and give them a little pat on the back.
I'm glad that's what you went
with. Yeah, that's exactly what I do with every single person that I don't know. I call them my best friend.
It's true. Come to the front door. She will do it, I
promise. And I just feel like if I had someone, if I didn't know anyone at the gathering and I walked in and someone looked at me and said, "What's up, best friend? What are you doing here?" Like, but also, what's your name? Because, you know, obviously you don't know their name.
Right.
Then I would immediately be like, okay, nerves kind of gone. Like, now I know this one person.
Right.
And so, yeah, I just think as a freshman, that first week or 2 weeks are so important, because if you don't get out there while everyone else is getting out there, then you're not going to get out there ever. I guess is
I think
not
it's just
ever,
I think
but
it's
like,
a great starting point.
Yeah, not
because
ever.
Everyone at that point that's a freshman is in the same boat.
Yeah.
So it's maybe in your own head a little less pressure, but also if you decide to chicken out during that time, there's still really great times to jump in.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
even when it feels like the dust has settled and everyone's just a part of all of their groups and clubs and sororities and fraternities, and like there's no place for you, there's still definitely a place for you. And it's not just at the gathering, at other places.
Man,
but we'd love for it to
only
be at the gathering. But don't let that like bring defeat in your mind of like, oh, I missed it. Welcome week, aka 2 weeks is over and I'm just done for the year.
Yeah,
I have nowhere.
Like,
now. That's not true. That's the enemy lying to you. And so be bold enough to be like, you know what? I'm going to go try this campus ministry or this group for this week and just see.
Yeah.
And it's not like all hope is lost after welcome week.
Yeah. Even though it feels like it sometimes.
It may feel like it's not the truth.
So kind of almost circling back to kind of what we started with, about why biblical godly friendships, same thing, why godly friendships are so important. That doesn't mean that you just have to have only godly friendships.
Correct. I will
correct.
affirm that.
That is right.
Yes.
Survey says. Anyways, that doesn't just mean that you only have to have godly friendships.
Right.
And honestly, it's awesome to have ungodly friendships, whatever you would call it, friendships that aren't centered
friends
around,
that are unbelievers.
Yeah, friends that are unbelievers. Awesome, because then that gives you the chance to make those friendships godly
Absolutely.
friendships. So kind of talking about that, what is a good way to balance godly friendships and those friendships with unbelievers, and kind of just make sure that you're being yourself in both circumstances, situations, but also making both parties feel comfortable almost.
Absolutely. Well, I do agree with your statement. Like, we can't just always only have friends that are believers, and that is the bubble that we live in. Like, that doesn't feel biblical to me.
Yeah.
I think that those relationships look dramatically different than my friendships with unbelievers. Both are genuine to who I am. Both are authentically me. And I think struggling with that at times is hard, especially when I was a little bit younger, of like, I have to be this person. And then when I'm with my friends that, don't follow the Lord or aren't pursuing that right now, I need to be like this softer, more like bland version of, Jesus to them, which is not the case. But I caught myself doing that a lot. So I think first it just like, Jesus was a great example of this. And I'm not trying to be like, Jesus shook up here, but like Jesus like ate with sinners. He pursued sinners. Like, that's what we're called to do, like as believers. But he also had his 12 disciples that he would continuously come back to and like be in community with, pray, like study, like dialogue, be together in community, biblical community, but then also love on people that need Jesus. Like, they need to be saved, and we're called to do that. We're called to constantly being pursuing those relationships and caring for people, because I feel like that's the ultimate way to care for people. Absolutely. Is to care for their eternity and where they're going to be. And those relationships just look different. They look different in a sense of I don't expect that person, that friend, to like speak truth and love to me. I don't expect them to, point me towards him. I don't expect them to like circle up and have a Bible study with me all the time. Like, would I love that?
Yeah, that would be
yes,
awesome.
That's the end goal. That's what we're working towards. And so my time with them looks different in that sense of like, I'm going to live my life, because once I've given my life to Christ and in pursuing him, my life looks dramatically different compared to them in a lot of ways. Like, and if I'm going to be authentically me, they're going to see Christ. Like, if I'm staying true to who I am. Now, am I going to walk up to them and like start, preaching a sermon to them? No. Or when they're walking through something really hard, am I just going to be like, well, you made that choice on your own because you chose to not honor the Lord with this decision and this decision. That's why you're here. Like, probably not. That feels a little aggressive. And
probably,
they also haven't signed up to follow the Lord. So their life is going to look different, and I shouldn't expect that from them. But me living my life will already look a little different than them, in how I make my choices, or how I, am prayerful about things, and how I approach certain topics, or I approach conversations with them, or how we walk through things. And so I think they naturally see the Lord in a lot of just our dialogue and our relationship. And I can be authentic to that. I can be genuine in every conversation I have with them. My aim is just a little bit different when I'm coming to them. I'm not going to come to them more than likely with like heavy burdens that I need them to pray with me through, like, or that I'm struggling. Like, I'm not going to probably offload that on them in that moment. But when I'm with them, I want them to see Christ, and I want them to feel loved, because I do love them. That's why I'm around them. I want to be with them, and not just for the sole purpose of pointing them to Christ, even though that's the main reason.
Yeah.
But it's because I love them, and because I love them, I want to point them to Christ and show them what that looks like, and show them the hope and joy that I have because of that. And so balancing those are really hard at times, sometimes. But I think I made it harder when I was in college, because I tried to be two different people in those settings instead of just who I am, and being mindful to the Spirit and how the Lord was leading me in conversations. And I was trying to control it more on my own and filtering on my own, instead of the Lord guiding and directing and giving me discernment in my conversations with them. I'm not two different people. I just need to be me, but I needed to be more in tune with the Lord and how he's wanting to use me in those relationships instead of trying to control, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense, actually. I definitely like what you said about making it harder by trying to be two different people, because sometimes I find myself doing that, but not really like, I think like I'm the same person around everyone, but just kind of like I tweak some things to be the person that I think other people
right.
want me to be. And so at work, if I had a job, I don't anymore because I got fired. That's a topic for another day, though.
We could talk about that at coffee.
Talk about that later. But I found myself like giving in to just the world, honestly, in the flesh, and like maybe the way I spoke wasn't the way that I should have been. It definitely wasn't the way. I don't know why I'm saying maybe. It definitely wasn't the way I should have been speaking. But it was all to like make them feel comfortable, and honestly to kind of make me feel comfortable too.
Yeah.
Because when you're like different, I don't want to say different, that sounds terrible, but when you see things differently than everyone else,
you have a different point of view.
It kind of gets weird and awkward at times, because like they could be talking about everyone that they've hooked up with and all of this and all of that, and you're just like, oh yeah, well, that's not what I'm trying to do. Like,
right. And I think too, just another point to that, we also live in the South, and so
it all comes back to the South.
Our culture, like even church and Christian culture in that, is easily slid of like, how far can that line go? How far, like we've made a lot of things acceptable that are not acceptable. And so there's so many versions of like, yeah, I'm a Christian, what that looks like. And it's like this scale of like, how much do I really want to apply that to my life?
Yeah.
And what areas and which other. And it just makes me think, I'm pretty sure it's in 1 Corinthians of like, do not be deceived. When you are around fools, your morals will be affected. They will be blurred. They will be, you suddenly like, oh, that's not that bad. And that's right. Jesus didn't say to not do that, but like, yeah, he did. But it's just crazy how fast that's surrounding ourselves and being more than just like not cordial acquaintances or just being around people, how that much that affects us. And how much leeway we give, how that translates into our own lives at times in our own walk.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just like this constant check-in of like, okay, who is forming who? Who is shaping who? And if it's them forming me, we've got to reevaluate what the dynamic of this relationship is. And that's me setting boundaries. That's me having self-control so that I can honor the Lord and hopefully win them for him. But if I just continuously look like them, we're never going to get close to that.
Yeah. And you don't really know that as a freshman. I remember coming into college and being like, obviously like, oh, the friendships I have affect the way I am, but you really never know how badly they affect who you are until like
you're there.
Until you're there.
Yes.
And you're sitting there one day and you're like, wow, did that really just come out of my mouth, or did I really just do that thing? Like, I would have never done that 2 years ago when I had these friends, or I would have never, or even like I would have never done that last week when I was hanging out with, my godly friends, and now I'm not hanging out with them, and now I'm doing this. Like, what the heck?
Right.
And so it gets so hard to balance that scale, whatever you want to call it, because it affects you, but it also affects them as well.
Yeah.
And so, like, you're gonna say something.
I was just thinking, my shift in college was figuring out that it wasn't a balance, that it was me staying true to who the Lord has created me to be, and be authentically me.
Yeah.
And that when I'm pursuing him and listening to him and being prayerful over all of my friendships, godly or for my friends that aren't following yet, he gives me wisdom and discernment in those conversations, in those settings, in those meetings that we're in, that, I would have said this normally, but no, like, I feel convicted in that, and I'm going to shift to that. And I think that was a huge shift for me of like, I don't have to balance it. I just need to be who he's called me to be, and he will lead and guide and give me the words and give me the actions, and he'll convict me. Like, when,
for sure.
I would have joined in, and now, no, I've said this is who I want to be and who I want to pursue. So I need to start acting like it. And that speaks to them in great ways, more than I could ever be like, oh, did I say the right thing? Or did I say too much about Jesus? Or did I talk about church too much? Or like, that's not helping them in any way. Me being authentically who Christ has called me to be is what's going to help them, and in turn make me more like him. And so I think that was a huge shift. Honestly, it was my junior year of college, of where I really was like, that's what that means. Like, that is what I need to be pursuing, instead of this like juggling act and like put on this hat for this setting and this hat on for another. And I saw my friendships dramatically shift too in that, while I was also walking a whole new path with the Lord.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my goodness, I've never thought about it like that. And so kind of we kind of touched on it already just a little bit, but when you have those friendships with people who haven't found the Lord yet, what are some, obviously you want them to find that, and so you kind of want to do a little evangelizing, but also maybe your friend is like a raging atheist, like wants nothing to do with God, or maybe like they've had a bad experience in the church, or whatever it may be. What are some good ways, or how can you handle that, and how can you so to speak evangelize to those friends without kind of crossing any boundaries, if you kind of understand what I'm saying?
I think it's super important to know in those, because that is like such a varying scale of, non-believer. Like you were saying, there's so many different situations. They could have, are an atheist, or they've been in church and they've left, or they come to church but they're still like half, like they just come to church, like that's what they do. And so there's just this varying scale of that. But I think it's important, I feel like, to lead in those situations with, we're called to love all of them, and we can love each of them without 100% approving of their choices, 100% affirming their beliefs, without, I could agree with maybe like one thing that you believe, and I'm still called to love you and support you. And each of those relationships look different, but I think it's really important to show up for them, to still be present in their lives, to be that connecting point of like light and life in their life to Christ and to this community. And I think it takes a lot of prayer and a lot of discernment in that to navigate of like, okay, when do I have these conversations? When do I, say this? When do I share that maybe I disagree with like where you're heading right now? Like, when do I speak, and when do I just love them as a friend and continue to show up without compromising any of my beliefs, which is very doable, but it takes a lot of intentionality and a lot of seeking the Lord and praying that the Lord would do incredible things in their lives. I feel like oftentimes I can get caught in like, okay, Lord, tell me what you need me to do, how to love them best, how to do this. And I skip the whole part of just asking the Lord to do a miraculous work in their life. because he doesn't really need me for any of that. He can easily handle that on his own. But I skip that quite often. So I think it really leads, like, you need to lead with prayer in those situations. Choose to love them, choose to still pursue them, but also find the freedom that their salvation isn't riding on you. It's not your job to like convert them or bring them back to church and let them sit on the front row and, you know, worship the Lord all the days of their lives. Not that if you sit in the front row, you're like holier than anybody else, but maybe you are.
Maybe, I mean.
It's a bold move. It's a bold move. But I think it's our job to just be diligent in pursuing them and loving them and speaking truth. And like I said earlier, if you're being authentically who Christ has called you to be, that speaks a lot to them. They will see that instead of you just like trying to be friendlier or nicer or more like them to soften that. If you live your life the way Christ has called you to, it will be very apparent. And seeking him and praying for them and praying for words and discernment and not to be discouraged, because a lot of those relationships are super discouraging, and you're going to see your friends make choices that you're like, wouldn't have done that. Like, and some choices that are genuinely like really hard to watch people. And there may be seasons where you just have to watch from afar at times because they've pulled away from you or they've, you know, cut that piece off. But I feel like we're called to just still be consistent in prayer for them and consistent in loving them and ready with open arms when they decide to, you know, reconnect and want to come back.
Yeah. You know what you said? You said you can't save anyone. And I love that so much because when I started as a small group leader, I was trying to think of how long I've actually been a small group leader. It's only been a semester.
I was going to say, it can't be that long.
Yeah, it can't be that long. Whenever I started off as a small group leader, a lot of the stress I had was geared towards, like, I'm not doing enough, like, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, Mary Grace is the one that can, like, dissect, like, this passage, and, like, I can cook, and that's what I'm here for. Or, like, I'm good at building that community, and, like, me and Mary Grace together,
Power.
Don't even
power
talk.
Couple.
Yeah, let's not even talk about it. It's crazy. She's gonna love that you just called us a power couple. Like, she's gonna text me about this later. Anyways, and we sat down with Alex at the end of the semester, or maybe the middle. It was probably
just a
towards
few
the
days
end.
ago.
Yeah, you know, like the other day. And he asked us, like, what had been going well in our small group, what had been going bad, what we felt like we were struggling with, and all that stuff. And I think both me and Mary Grace answered with that, like, oh, just some insecurities with, like, we don't know what we're talking about, and we feel like this is this and that is that, and that we are just doing such a bad job at, you know, like, leading these girls in the way that God wants us to lead them to. And Alex literally sat there and was like, when did you become the savior of the world? And I was like,
Facts.
I was like,
It's
wow.
a good question.
I was like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, that is such, and that has literally stuck with me. Like, so now, like, every time I open my Bible to get ready for small group, I'm like, just read, prepare. You're not going to save anyone. It's all God. Just do what you're doing. And so shout out to Alex, but that was, that is something that has stuck with me every day since he said that. And that can apply in so many different areas in our life, not just if you're that insecure small group leader, because that is such a specific thing. But, you know, if you're that friend that has a friend who doesn't believe in God, and you're like, oh, I'm not doing enough for them. Like, I'm not telling them about Jesus every day, and I'm not repeating John 3:16 to them every day. You know, you can't save them. Like, you absolutely cannot.
I think
save
it
them.
takes, remembering that takes the pressure off of us. Not that it should remove the sense of urgency.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think it removes that pressure of, like, their salvation's in our hands.
Yeah.
Like, we're the ones that have to get, like, no, We talked about, they have that choice. They get to make that decision. It's our choice to continuously show up, be light, love them well. Speak truth, share that with them, but it's their choice. It's theirs to make. And so it's switches from pressure to like, yes, that urgency is still there of like, I'm going to pray for this friend every single day and for their salvation.
But now I just don't feel like
I don't feel like that weight's on me because it never has been and it never will be. Thank goodness. But we can get that on like repeat in our head, and it just takes us down a really not healthy road.
Yeah. I love that. This has been awesome, Carissa. You've been amazing.
Agreed.
As
Becky.
always. Come back whenever you want to.
I'm here quite often, so you just let me know.
I will. You just let me know. We'll have to plan that little coffee date. Maybe we
now it's documented, so it's got to happen.
So, in 2 weeks when you're like, it's your fault, I'm going to be like, actually.
It is.
Proof. It's, no, that's not what I'm going to say. Anyways, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
I promise. Awesome conversation. Never know how to do these outros, so.
You're killing it.
Goodbye, adios. Thank you for listening, guys. That's it.